Coach Teresa Ford here, and this is the Guiding You Home podcast. This is a thought-provoking and often humorous approach to moving you closer to the only one who can genuinely help you live a life of abundance and prosperity. Sound good? Yeah, it's you that needs to go within so you can sit in the driver's seat of your life, co-creating with God. So make room for more light and knowledge. As you continue to listen, you will discover elements of how to lead with your inner light, how to act on your specific promptings, and how to follow your spiritual intuition so you can fulfill the measure of your creation. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in. Hello. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? This is big. This is the thing that nobody ever talks about. They sugarcoat it, they skim the surface of it, but they don't show you, and I'm not going to actually show you visually, but I will show you through words, through description, what healing really looks like when you're healing trauma wounds, when you're healing those parts of you that are fragmented from the adult part of you that wants to thrive in life. So I want you to take a deep breath because this is going to be big. This is not light and fluffy chit chat. Deep breath in, let it all the way out. Trauma. Trauma is the result of something that happened. Trauma is what's left in your body after something happened. It might have been a shock. It might have been a disappointment. It might have been an injustice. It might have been an attack. It might have been neglect. It's just what happened from your perspective, from your age, and from your ability to manage your emotions. And the trauma is what's left over. So, as we dive into this, there is no judgment. There is nobody else's opinion that matters but yours. There is no right or wrong way to do this when you give yourself permission to do it fully. That your way through your trauma experiences is what will set you free. That's what we want. That's how we guide you home, is that you come back to your true self, the wholeness of who you are. And when we pick up those fragmented pieces or those little pieces of your childhood that got left behind because there was no process that would help them mature and grow and find understanding, find acceptance, find the ability to let go of them, find the healing. And so they got stuck. And that's where they remain, in the past. We don't have trauma in the future, right? We're only talking about the past. And a lot of times the conversation out there is, don't dwell on the past. Just get over it. Move on. But the past is an important element, and it holds the keys to our future happiness. So if we have junk in the past that we haven't dealt with, and we've tried to get over it, be happy in spite of it, move on, that is not the same as dealing with the actual trauma and going through the healing process. So when you are healing, it can feel chaotic, manic, a little out of control. Probably if somebody saw us, they would think we'd lost our minds. But it can come in the form of weeping and wailing. It can come in the form of anger and pounding your pillow, screaming at the top of your lungs, yelling into the universe, getting the gunk out. It's not a pretty thing. Imagine an entire jar of bacon lard. You got some of the bacon crumbles in there, they're burnt pieces. You got the lard, it's sticky, it's hard to get off of your hands when you're working with it. You can't just wipe it off with a towel or a rag. You need to get some degreaser and use some water and really rinse your hands well after washing them. That's how you get bacon lard off of you. In a sense, in my experience, that traumas feel like we're drowning in bacon lard. It feels like it's thick and there's no oxygen. It feels heavy. It feels lonely. It feels like we can't call out because we would look strange, or it would just be inappropriate even to include somebody else in this process because it's so private. Now, some of us have support around us. Some of us can invite that one or two persons who feel, who are well enough, who are healed enough to hold space for your wounds. That's not typical. Even in a breathwork class, where everyone's weeping and wailing and hollering and getting the gunk out, it may or may not be fruitful for you if you're you're conscious about, or what's the word I'm thinking of? If you're self-conscious, if you're looking around wondering if you're wailing too loud or weeping too loud, or spouting off swear words too loudly, we might withhold some of our anger, some of our injustice and overwhelm and sadness and grief and loss. So putting yourself in a private place is probably a really good idea. And as you are working through the trauma, you will probably find a very natural way through it. It's sort of hard to conjure up the emotions of the trauma until a life experience exposes the wound. And when you have an interaction with somebody and that injustice comes up that was served to you on a cold plate by immature parents back in the day, when you didn't have a handbook for emotionally dealing with that situation, you couldn't process it fast enough. There was something that was expected of you to respond or react a certain way, and you just were a deer in the headlights and didn't know how to do it. Your body went into fight or flight mode, freeze or fawn mode, and you were just stuck in a pattern of being frozen, or being, when the emotions came at you from emotionally unstable people, you might have felt guilty, shameful, fear, neglect, rejection, abandonment. And that's what got stuck. Those are the things that got stuck. When you weren't able to keep yourself safe or protect yourself fast enough to keep up with the situation at hand. So anytime you don't feel safe and you feel defensive, or you feel put upon, even a sense of martyrdom or victimhood kind of wells up in you, that there you go again, that's always happens to me. When that's going on, that's a wound. And to be able to go back and identify the earliest time in your life that you can remember, when did that first happen to me? Why is it? What are the circumstances now that is bringing that up for me? And to go find the healing of it. And the healing of it is to act out that emotion. To cry hard. Like, let the tears out. It was so frustrating. It wasn't fair. I didn't deserve that. I should have been treated differently. I am a good person, but that person couldn't see my goodness. And it can turn into a lot of emotion and explosive emotion. Let it be that. Put yourself in a safe place. If you don't want to hear yourself doing the weeping and wailing, put yourself in a safe place and put headphones on with sweet, soft music. Just put on some healing music and then just let it rip. How often have we ever let ourselves do that? More often than not, we repress our emotions. We shove them down. We try not to cry. We try and show bravery. We try and be something that would be admirable in our circumstance and situation. That is not required of you. If there is an inner child in you that is lost, heartbroken, sad, abandoned, rejected, has been called all the names, has been bullied, it's time for you to take a stand for that child. And you've got to stop the bleeding. And you do that by letting that child express themselves, whatever comes out. Don't judge it, just accept it. Let the weeping and wailing and pounding on pillows begin. Let all of it come out. Get it out of your system. It's just toxicity. It doesn't belong there. But it's been sitting there because your inner child didn't feel safe. They needed to buck up and be stronger and stop being a whiner and all the things. And it wasn't safe to express yourself. And that's why this is so important, is because you need a life full of expression. True, high vibrational, all you expression. But we've repressed it and suppressed it. And every time we have an experience in life that brings up those angry emotions, we're angry, we're raging, we're mad, we're sad, we feel loss and grief and all the things. And then we don't know what to do with it. Let them out. Free that inner child. Let that person express as they see fit. You know, I watched an experience. My daughter was having an interaction with her young son, 3 years old. And he was just navigating big brotherhood with his 18-month-old sister. And she wants to do everything he wants to do. Now this, interestingly enough, as a little child can feel traumatic if you are not given freedom of expression. So it was an argument over a chair. They both wanted the plastic chair. She wanted to do what he was doing. He had it first, but as the big brother, he was being asked to share with his sister. Always. And if she was screaming, he needed to give up what he was doing and give it to her, so she would stop screaming. This little boy was so tired of being dealt with unjustly. Like a 3-year-old knows what justice feels like. He knows when it's just too much to share. Every day, all day, like as if he was one of the parents. You know, parents are expected to give up what's theirs and share it with their child. But little boys, not so much. Little girls, not so much. There has to be some level of fairness that they can feel. It's like, oh, you can have a turn, and when you're done with it, will you give your sister a turn? Like that kind of fairness needs to come into play. Well, this little boy had a meltdown. He clenched his fist, his face turned red, and he closed his eyes and just let out a dinosaur-sized scream at his mom, in her face. She was on the floor, and he was in her face, screaming that he was not going to share the chair. Had that ever even been a thing in my childhood, I would have been knocked to the ground and beaten silly. I had learned early on that self-expression was not safe. So I repressed my feelings about the unfairness of the requests of emotionally immature parents. Luckily, this little boy has a very mature mother, wise enough in her young mothering years to know that he was expressing himself and it wasn't really about her. And he just let this dinosaur scream out of his mouth. Tears were rolling down his face. He was crying at the top of his lungs and letting her know how he felt about the ruling of the chair. As a wise mother, first of all, it startled her. Second of all, she decided not to react yet. And third of all, she gave him space. And as she moved away, well, she checked to see if he was open for a hug, which he was not. He screamed at her in her face, "Do not touch me." And so she honored that. And she said, "Okay, I will be over here." And she moved to a different chair in a different corner of the room. She said, "When you are done expressing your anger, I will be over here, open for a hug, whenever you're ready." Just witnessing that. Like, I didn't have space for that when I was raising kids, because I was just coming out of what the only example I had ever known. It was not as bad as what I experienced as a child, but it wasn't as good as what I was witnessing in their home. And sure enough, this little guy, he got his few more dinosaur stomps and screams out into the open. And those turned into tears of sadness, you know, because anger is just masked sadness. And he came to her and said, "Mommy, I'm ready for a hug." And she opened her arms and she swallowed him up in her arms. And he said, "I'm sorry I screamed at you, Mommy." And she said, "I know. I'm sorry that you were upset. But in this family, if we scream and yell, we can still love each other and we still give hugs." That is what your inner child needs. Your inner child didn't get that. You didn't feel safe to express yourself. When you feel like screaming and yelling and throwing a tantrum, whether the universe is giving you lemons and you have to find a way to make lemonade, or you are experiencing real emotions in relationships, it is your job to stop and process. Go get those emotions out in a nice, safe place where you can be alone and you're not worried about the ugly cry or the loud noise that you're making. Maybe your car is a really good place to do that. An empty ocean side if you have the luxury of having access to that. But your job is to get the emotions out. Your inner child needs to express herself, and also following that needs the hug. You need the acceptance. One of the ways that you can do acceptance is here, rubbing the shoulders, is here, rubbing the face, is here, putting a hand on your forehead, even rocking back and forth can be very comforting. When you are done with the expressing of your grief, sadness, anger, rage, comforting yourself. It's okay. It's okay to have those emotions. It's okay to feel the way you feel. That's not wrong. That's not victimhood. We're not going to stay in it forever. But if you don't get it out, then it remains a wound. And then when you practice that acceptance, rubbing of the shoulders, crossing your arms and rubbing each shoulder together, or putting your hand on your forehead and rocking back and forth. You can even tap your chest and your heart. And then have a blanket handy. You're going to be spent. Emotional work is emotional. It's exhausting. So have a blanket handy. Lie down. Cover yourself up in a warm blanket because your nervous system is going to be a little bit on fire now. And when I say on fire, I mean it's lit up. It's moving through the emotional realm. And sometimes it can dysregulate your body temperature. You might experience chills. You might experience feeling extremely cold. Your body's looking for more comfort. So put yourself in a warm place. Lie down, put a blanket on you, and continue to soothe yourself. It's okay to have those feelings. I'm never wrong. That's a good one because you aren't. You're never wrong. If you're sensing an injustice and a rage and anger, there's something happening there. And you need to address it. Okay? So just let yourself take a nap, soothe yourself, and then after this, after some time of just, maybe you'll fall asleep, and which is the fastest reset if you can fall asleep. If not, just re-regulating that nervous system, letting yourself come down quite naturally. You will get moved from that high explosive emotion to a very soft emotion. You know, like I said, sadness is just underneath all that anger. When the anger's out, the sadness shows up, the tears show up, the feeling sorry for something you might have done or been part of, or having compassion for the thing that happened to you, or the person that was struggling, that was part of the issue. Like, all of that comes later. But when you give yourself permission to completely express yourself, the healing has begun. And it might be hard, and it might take all you've got for the rest of the day. Like, your energy is sapped. It's okay. Let it be what it is. Don't judge it. Don't move through it faster than you're able to. Have you ever done that where you're like crying and then it subsides for a second, and then you feel like crying again, and then it subsides, and then the tears really come, and then it subsides a little bit, and then you just have a couple more really hard sobs, and then it subsides? Just let yourself move through it. Don't judge it. Don't stop yourself. Don't shorten it. Don't tell yourself you're being a baby. You're not. You're not. There is an inner child that needs that kind of acceptance and freedom. And when you give yourself that freedom, that child starts to mature. That child moves on from that place of being stuck in your life. And it is fully open to joining you in the rest of your life as a mature part of who you are. So let the journey take place. Do not shortchange it. Don't try and ignore it. Don't bury it. Just move through it. Let it come up. As soon as a life experience shows you that there's a wound from your past, it's like, oh, that's the same energy as I felt when I was 7 years old and I didn't get the award in school, or that I was made fun of on the playground, or I was bullied at home, or whatever it is. Let it come out. You might even have to create a space for that to happen so that you're in a private, safe place by yourself. But plan to heal. Please plan to heal. Just let those parts of you come out, because as soon as you do, and those little innocent, neglected, self-abandoned pieces of you become whole, you can start to take your life to another level, because there's fewer times that you feel defensive, fewer times that you feel offended, fewer times that you feel sad, rage, anger. Just like it doesn't come up anymore. Or, or it may come up in other ways, and that's another wound. Go back and heal it. But as you start to heal these things, you'll notice, that thing used to bother me. It doesn't bother me anymore. I used to really hate that person did that thing, because it kind of reminded me of the thing in me that wasn't healed. And now I don't care if they're like that. It doesn't bother me at all because you've healed it within yourself. Can you see how this can really take your life to another level? That you're spending so little time in wounded areas of your life that it just leaves so much room to grow and expand and experience your higher self on this amazing level where you're just expanding exponentially. Like you just feel happy and satisfied, and there's so little fear and the worry of tomorrow that hasn't happened yet. It's not there anymore. You're just letting yourself get into the flow of life, and very little throws you off. But that's a process. I'm talking years. So be okay with the process. So it takes years. So you spend, 6 weeks out of a year just moving through a process, moving through a healing process. And when I say 6 weeks, it's different for everybody, but you can have all those emotions, you can move through it in a day if you get really good at this. But if, at first it can take a week. It's like, man, I've really been in a funk for this week, because it takes time to be aware that you have a wound, and it takes time to identify where that wound came from. It takes time, like even if you can't remember the memory of where it came from, just an inkling that it's a wound and it's reoccurring. It keeps coming up in your relationships, in your life experience. It keeps coming up. It's a theme. That's a wound. Identify it, call it something. It's an emotion. Call it the emotion that it feels like to you. Write about it. And if a memory comes up, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. But feel the emotion and feel it fully. Like, do the dinosaur scream. Let the hot tears roll. Clench your fist, pinch your eyes, and let it out. And everything gets better. Everything gets better. That's where the healing starts. Don't judge it if it lasts a week and you feel just low and depressed. And I don't mean like depression where you need clinical help. I mean, it just feels like nothing feels exciting right now because you just feel low. Let yourself feel low. What that is grief and loss. And there is no timeline to grief and loss. Like when you get the sadness out, if this has been a thing for you for a very long time, there is a loss of having to hold the space for that injured child. And sometimes we don't know how to live without the wounds. It's a whole new experience to live without the wounds. So just be patient with yourself. It's going to take time. It may take a week, may take a month, where you have ups and downs and these emotions are just rolling through you. But if they can roll through you, if you'll just let them, allow them, and don't squash them, they will move through you. And then you'll be free. That part of you will experience elation, freedom, and true self-expression. More of you will feel safe. It will become your favorite thing. Your life will be less chaotic, less offended, less defending, less negative energy, focused on things that are taking you away from the life you were meant to live. So heal those wounds, be patient with the process, and sprinkle it with lots and lots of love, because you are so worthy of the love and the healing that's on its way. So take care of you, and let me know if there's anything that I can do to help you on your journey. I'm here for you if you need it. Lots of love and light. I will talk to you later. Thanks for listening. I invite you to leave your feedback and share your aha moments as you listen to this podcast. Also, you can access more information or any of the programs, courses, or worksheets that I've mentioned on these episodes on my website at teresaford.life. Or what I would really love is for you to connect with me on Instagram at teresaford.coaching and on Facebook at Coaching with Teresa Ford, so I can give you more interesting insights and further coaching to help you fulfill the measure of your creation.